Well, good afternoon. I guess it's morning. Good morning, everybody. Harry Schrader with you. Voices of the Valley, a special edition of Voices of the Valley here on valleyhoopsinsider.com. A couple of weeks, maybe a couple of months ago now, Neal Bradley, the Murray State legendary Hall of Fame radio broadcaster, decided he was going to pull back a little bit and just settle in with some football and not do racer basketball anymore. And well, Murray State had to come up with a new announcer, but they needed a special person, not just a great broadcaster. And Nico Yenko and the other people on the search committee did a national search to find that unique person, that unique broadcaster. And wow, I think they did a spectacular job. They landed Jeff Bidwell, who'd been in the area for a long time doing television sports and being very engaged in the Murray State family and all those kinds of things. And they landed, I think, the perfect choice. And he's our guest today on Voices of the Valley. And we'll see if I can bring him in by technology here, see if I can pull this off. And there he is. I'm still supernaturally technologically advanced. That's Jeff. Hey, Jeff, congratulations. Welcome to Voices of the Valley. I'm super happy for you.
Harry, thank you. Happy to be here this morning and super excited about this new venture.
Longtime TV guy, but rolling over to the radio side, that's got to be a pretty big change, or maybe not. Your thoughts? I know you did a radio show for a long time as well.
Yeah, I'm not naive enough to think it's going to be just a seamless transition, but um, you know, I've been paid to talk for a long time, so it's just kind of talking into a different microphone. And now I don't have to wear makeup like I had to do for those 2 decades on television. So I guess that's a good thing. But I mean, I'm really excited about it, and really, I couldn't have a better mentor in Neal Bradley, who's he isn't going anywhere, so he's already been a sounding board for me about certain aspects. And then, Kenny Roth, he's going into his 10th season now doing color, who did the first 9 with Neal. He's one of my best friends. So our relationship, as he said, we talk ball on the phone all the time, and now we just get to do it during the actual game. So I'm really excited about that.
Recently, you stepped away from the TV side. I don't know if people called it retirement, if you called it retirement, but you step away from TV and bang, you're the voice of the racers. Talk about that adjustment.
Yeah, it's been about 15, 16 months. I got away from TV. March 31st of 22 was my last official day there. And it was just one of those, kids were getting older and I was getting older, and, doing all the, staying up late every single night, and, and all that was just, it was just starting to be a drag. And it was also, with the kids being older, all of their school events and, the plays and the music performances, they were all at 6 o'clock, and I had some place to be at 6 o'clock. And so just made the decision that it was time to step away from that. And, now we've got, my wife and I own a business, and I've got a real estate license. So it's kind of like I do a lot of other things that are self-employed. So it's allowed me the freedom to be able to, do stuff like this now, which, if I had a normal 9 to 5, I think this would have been a very difficult venture to take on.
I've been places where I worked with people I liked a lot and then stepped away for whatever reason. I remember watching your final broadcast. You were pretty emotional about leaving the TV station.
Oh gosh, Harry. Yeah, it was hard. It's kind of one of those things it's going to be different, but then you don't realize how hard it's going to be until you've got to sitting there and stare into that little box and start talking, and you kind of just get the flood of everything you've gone through for, it's you never, I don't think you want to be your job, but in a lot of ways that job was my identity for my entire professional life. I walk through the grocery store and it's like TV guy, they may not know my name, but that's just who I am. And,
Sure.
And it was just such a fun job for so long, and to be able to walk away. And I think it was the emotions of just the changes, and also sort of the unknown that I was going into. It was, it was a leap, and there was a lot of faith behind that. And so it was tough, but in the end, with 16 months now or so in the rear view, it was certainly the best decision I could have made.
I know that Neal and others were on the search committee, and they ended up, hiring you, offering you the job. And after the announcement Neal was very vocal about his support, and he was glad you got the job. His endorsement, his public endorsement, I mean, he probably would have done it if he didn't like you, right? I mean, because he's a classy guy, but it was heartfelt and it meant it. He meant it. That's got to be, I don't know, affirming and encouraging to you.
It is, and Neil and I have, I mean, I've known him since I got here, and it's been, it really from him and the public as a whole, because you don't know. I mean, as I've said, you don't. I mean, I'm not the first person to say it, but you don't want to be the guy that follows the guy, and he's not the
Right.
guy. I mean, he's the legend, and so
Yes.
I was, there was certainly fear is a strong word, but I was like, I don't know how I'm gonna be received. As much as people enjoyed me in my prior role, to be able to step in for him was a little daunting. But he's been great, and really the reaction to it as a whole has been great, and that's been very heartwarming so far.
Part of that is you're part of the family. What I mean is, in your role at the TV station there, you obviously had to cover the racers, but I've been around the racer program, and almost all the media people, you included, are people they kind of feel connected to the team and the culture and the program. It's pretty unique to me. Like, I've been all around the valley in the OVC for years, and seeing people that cover teams versus people that cover teams and feel connected to them, it's very different. And I think you're just part of the family that's taking over one of the roles from somebody else's that's part of the family.
Yeah, it's a fine line when you're trying to be a journalist about it, because there's times you've got to do your job, and
Mm,
we've had those instances over the years that, I'm sure there were things that we had to report on they would have loved us not to report on. But
mm,
it's just it's a small town, and that's kind of the way that it's been. They treat the media like they treat everybody in Murray, and it's just kind of one big family. And for me, it was. Um, I love college basketball. I that has been my number one with a bullet forever in terms of just sports that I love.
mm.
And to be able to come here and go to an NCAA tournament, and it started, because where Paducah is, it's really right in the middle between Murray and Carbondale. And when I got here in 2002, SIU was just starting that
Rolling.
amazing run that they were on. And so we were ping ponging back and forth between, Murray was sort of had an every other year thing going, and SIU was just every year for that 5 or 6 year stretch. And so I was just like, I was in heaven, and this was great. And then, SIU has gone through their struggles for the last 10 or 15 years that they're working their way out of. And, this last 10 years for Murray has been just bananas. And, for me, it was, um, you know, I don't know when it happened. I think where I sort of my feelings towards them sort of kicked into another gear, I think. But it was, I've always said that, you know, winning is good for business.
Sure.
And that was always where, my rooting in the end, it's like, it doesn't matter to me if they win or lose, but if they win, it's good for business. And business has been really, really good now for a decade plus. And so, when you get to go do things and go places and stuff that,
Right.
and that's the thing about this. I mean, I went with them to the Great Alaska Shootout. I've been to, I never would have gone to Alaska, with them,
Hmm.
and been to countless NCAA tournaments. And it's just been one thing leads to another, and it starts with a like and a little bit of a crush, and then suddenly you're in love with it before it's all over.
And now you get to root. I mean, I think that makes
Yes.
it fun for a broadcaster as well. You did some of the ESPN Plus games last year. Talk about that experience and maybe how that helped you land this job.
Boy, it was great. I thought that was something that with them with Murray going to the Valley, that I knew that the Valley had strict rules that they had to have
Hmm.
separate radio and TV crews. So I thought, hey, it's, from the time I retired, that, I was 6, 7 months away, but it's like, there's an opportunity for me to do some games. And I'm telling you, I got in there and I was like, this is so much fun. Because I would look up at some point, during one of the timeouts, and it's like, man, there's 8 minutes left in the second half. I was like, how did this get away so fast? I was like,
Yeah.
I would have just done it forever. So I think it was good, that I think the search committee at least had seen me uh, broadcast, even on from a television
Sure.
standpoint. And there's obviously there are differences, but there are some commonalities between the two. And so I think that gave them a little. It was a little less of a leap of faith for them to say, okay, we've seen him do TV and he did fine. We'll work through this and make the radio work.
Jeff Bidwell's with us. He's the brand new voice of the Murray State Racers basketball team. That's got to have a weird feel to you after Neal being that guy forever. I was doing some research because I know you a little bit, but I thought I ought to know more than just some of our casual conversations. You wrote a book. I wrote it down, Extending the Stay to San Jose, about the 2010 NCAA tournament
Yeah.
and the Racers experience there. Talk about that book. I didn't know you were an author. You're really I can't believe you came on my show.
Oh, I think we are overstating author just a little bit. So that was, I guess it was around 2015. It had been 5 years since Murray had beaten Vanderbilt on the buzzer beater in the 2010 tournament, and I really was just, it was, it was kind of a lark. I was just going to write a story for the website at the TV station, just sort of a, where are they now type of thing 5 years later, and just started diving into it and talking to people, and it unearthed things that I had never, as much as we were around the team, stuff that there's so much stuff that goes on behind the scenes you had no idea about. And so, and I was like, this maybe could be a book. And I was like, I'd never written a book. And I did. And it was the hardest thing I've ever done by a lot. When it was done, it was like, I need to just go somewhere and not think for a while, because it was daunting, but it was fun. And it's just, if nothing else, I can, I had a high school English teacher that told everybody in class one day, she's like, I believe every person in this room has one good book in them. And I was like, well, I don't know if it was good, but I had one, and I think that's about it. So, but that was Neal's call for at the end of after the buzzer beater, that we're extending the stay to San Jose, and so it was a homage to him.
There you go.
In that title.
The documentary Stay on Your Wall about Steve Prohm's first season. It's kind of surreal to have him back. And I'm a big fan. I think you are too, of what Coach Prohm can do and will do there, has done there. But tell me if I'm right about this. It seems to me that last spring you put together a whole series of, historic times in Racer basketball for the TV station as well.
Yeah.
Storytelling. It's just a big part of what have always done and you will be doing.
It is. And that project was ultimately, that project kept me in TV for a year longer, because I went into my bosses and said, here's what I want to do. And if they'd said no, I was like, okay, I'm out. But they gave me the blessing to do it. And I tried to it was sort of, I guess, spinning out of the pandemic and the Last Dance, and seeing how, okay, we can do this 10-part deal. And again, it was just one of those things. We were really close to the team that year. We're really involved with everything they had done. And so I knew we had just countless amounts of video. But again, there were stories that were unearthed that we were able to, share. That the statute of limitations passes a little bit after a decade. And, but it was really, it was for me to ultimately, and that kind of played into, Matt McMahon's last year, where they went 31-3 and, got to the second round of the tournament again. It was like, for me, it was like, I couldn't find a better going away present. It was like, just to go out on top. That was another project that was like, when it was done, I was like, I've been working on this for a year. I was like, I can't put forth any more energy to this project. And when it was over, but I was like, I couldn't have been more proud of it. And so, from that storytelling standpoint, that's something you learn in the TV business. And really, it's all media business, is that, somebody wins, somebody loses, we all go home, but it's the stories that people remember and that they can attach to. And I think that's what, really, brings more of an attachment to programs and to people than just, results of games.
You talked about being good for business, covering sports here in St. Louis or at the collegiate level. And the players and the coaches are happier too. They're easier to get along
100%.
with. As taking on this new role, not only your storytelling night after night and over the course of the season, but kind of carrying the holy grail of Racer basketball with you. And I think one of the reasons that you're such a perfect fit for this is that you do own the history. You
Yeah,
do respect it and hold it fast. And bringing in somebody else could be a good announcer. There could be always could be a faster gun in the West,
sure.
but they're not going to know and understand what makes Racer basketball special.
Yeah, and I think I don't know what the ultimate decision was to go with me, but I think that certainly played a role in it. To have somebody, Kenny Roth has been a part of the program since 1991 when he came in with Scott Edgar as an assistant
Mm,
coach, and he's had multiple roles. He's been an administrator, and stepped away to go into private business, but he still lived in Murray and now has been with the radio for 10 years. So it's like he's been here for 30 plus years. I've been here for 20 plus, and it is, I think just to be able to add context, and it's the same, it's no different than when I walked in here 20 years ago. It's like you try to cram for the test, but it's like, without sort of that, where that context of a program and context of the history is over time it eventually becomes ingrained in your DNA, almost, where you don't think about it, it's just part of you, and so you can regurgitate what you need to when necessary. That I don't know if that was what put me over the top, but if it was, I'm glad it did.
Before we let you go, looking back at your 20 years being around the program, uh, there's been some great players that have played at Murray. And could you tick off just a handful of them that people that are still in the Missouri Valley Conference getting to know Murray State basketball? Who are some of those legendary guys? And tell us a little bit about just a handful of them.
Well, just, I mean, obviously in the last decade, it's been, John Morant was just a supernova that came
Mm,
through. I think that, from a standpoint of just most talented players to ever come through this school, I'd be hard pressed for anybody to argue anybody but him. Cameron Payne was here for 2 years. He's had a successful run now in the NBA, part of a team that won 25 games in a row there in 2015, and they won a
right.
CIT championship in 14. And for me, and I come from a biased place just because of the impact that I say he had on my life. He had the impact he had on my professional life, and the things that he allowed me to go see and do and experience was Isaiah Cannon.
Hmm.
Another guy that got his jersey retired a couple years ago, 2,000 point scorer. In that 2012 season when Murray was ranked in the top 10 in the country, which 10, 11 years later is still almost surreal to say that out loud.
No
I mean,
kidding.
he was a second team All American. A guy that was just uh, and really from a university standpoint, he was perfect. That it was like he
Hmm.
could be an ambassador for the program at any time. It's like, hey, we need you to do media today. Hey, we need you to go to this kid's birthday party today. Hey, we need you to go speak at this school, and they never had to worry about it. And he was an absolute just gem of a human being, on top of just an incredible basketball player. And then there's guys back in the '90s. Popeye Jones just won a
Sure.
an NBA championship there with the Nuggets as an assistant coach, and some legendary guys like that. But really, the Murray fans like to call it point guard U,
Yeah.
and it's hard to argue with. I mean, the last year, Jonathan Stark, another guy that's playing overseas now. It's just been one after another that have just been these incredible talents, and I don't think it's an accident now. After you get one or two, it's like, well, you guys recruited well, but I think it starts to stockpile over the years that you can come to Murray, Kentucky, and you can go play wherever you want to play, and there's a lot of recent history that shows that.
I remember seeing Ja the first time. Somebody had told me he was really good, was going to be really good. He was a freshman, and the Racers came here to St. Louis, and Jonathan Stark was the headliner.
Mhm. Yep.
He was the guy. And Ja was coming off the bench, and somebody had told me, "Hey, pay attention to this guy." And in about 15 minutes of that game, I was like, "Uh-oh.
Yeah.
He's different." But I didn't think he was going to be this different. And I don't know if you can peg him that quickly, but I watched him
No.
win game and I thought he's going to be different. He's going to be a really outstanding OVC player. Maybe he can play professionally somewhere, and yikes, did he just explode?
He came back. He had a really good freshman year. But to your point, I mean, he was really third fiddle
Hmm,
behind Jonathan Stark, and they had a forward named Terrell Miller. Those guys
right.
were first team All League guys and really good. Got to the NCAA tournament, and then I think what we forget sometimes is that these guys, they're kids, and 6 months in their life is a really long time when you're 18 or 19 years old. And so he went from, we saw him in March, and he really got manhandled in the NCAA tournament. And I can't remember his name. He was point guard for West Virginia. And, he was 23, 24. I mean, he was a man, and
Sure.
he manhandled Ja. And we didn't see Ja again really until October when they came out to practice. And it took about 8 seconds that you're like, this dude has taken the absolute leap of his life. And then he was just dunking on anybody that was standing still. And it was tremendous. And that year is, it's hard pressed when you've got, look back to that 2012 season when, Murray started 23-0 and they're the last unbeaten in the country. And Dick Vitale's here for the bracket buster dancing at the court. And, they are a national story. And that season will always have a special place. But that Ja season where, I mean, he was the Beatles. He was the one-man Beatles. And that was a really good team around him. I mean, they were a very good team, but it was like everywhere they went, you would go in years when Ja wasn't there and, maybe Murray wasn't great. You go to Eastern Illinois, there's 300 or 400 people there for that game. Or you go to Edwardsville, it's not a packed house. Or you go to Moorhead, you go all over the place. They played in front of sellouts every single night on the road because this dude was going to show up and do something, and he rarely disappointed. And so it was, again, he was a supernova, and I've used that word multiple times, but it was, he's special and continues to be, and certainly the point of pride for this program, and somebody that, again, still a kid. I mean, he's 23 or whatever. He's going to be playing for a very long time.
Hey, before we let you go, I know it's very early. They've just had summer workouts, but thoughts about this year's Murray State squad?
I mean, I think from just the standpoint of they have guys coming back
How about that?
What a novel concept. Last year was just such a, I give Steve, you go 17-15, you're not going to get coach of the year, thoughts. But considering when he walked in the door on April 1st and he had one guy back and he just had to piecemeal that thing together last year, I thought it was just a tremendous job for them to be able to finish with a winning record and so on. And so I think the guys they've got coming back are, I think they're pretty good. I think just the year in the program, a year working with him, some of the pieces they brought in, I'm not gonna sit here and say, hey, they're gonna win the Valley, but at the same time, the Valley turned over a lot in those, as has been documented a lot. Those first three, the top 15 guys in the postseason awards. You know what? We lose 12 of them, 13. Well, Murray State's got one of them, and he's back, and Rob Perry. So
yeah, I thought that was huge that he came back.
100%. So I mean, he's certainly a great piece to, and he's really stepped up from a leadership standpoint, and this summer. And so I see them. The trajectory is north, and that's all you can really ask for, because this is, it's as much as Murray has played Valley teams over the years. They'll play 3 or 4 a year. They're not playing 11, and so it's a different animal right now. But I certainly anticipate them being able to build upon what they did last year, especially under the stewardship there of Steve Brum.
Well, listen, we look forward to tapping in and listening to you broadcast games. I remember telling your former athletic director, Kevin Saul, I remember talking to him before he left, just how great Neal Bradley is.
Oh,
I mean, like, he could call the game technically super well, could root for the team and applaud the other team all at the same time. I think Neal Bradley's the total package. And so I really look forward to hearing you do the games as well. And I'm super excited for you and for what's next for you.
Well, I appreciate it. Like I said, I wish we could have had a buffer and gotten some guy that was really bad at the job to stick in between Neal and myself. So maybe I get a little bit of grace, but he is an absolute unicorn, a one of one. And I take this job very seriously, and I take it with great responsibility that, it is what is being bestowed to me. And, I'm not replacing Neal in any stretch. I'm following him, and he has set the bar so impossibly high that for me, it's just, man, I'm going to do everything I can to chase that bar. But I'm really excited about this opportunity.
Appreciate your time today. That's Jeff Bidwell. He is the voice of Racers basketball at Murray State. Super excited for him.
Thank you,
Thanks
Harry.
for joining us today on Voices of the Valley, part of the Valley Hoops Insider website. Feel free to join us anytime. I'm Harry Schrader reminding you, since you've been there, make it a better place. We'll see you again real soon.